All right, welcome back. Vendetta Sports Fantasy Show. Today is Monday, August 31st. We're recording this at night. Myself, Trey Daubert, Cayne Lander, Scott Logush, the two Canadians are back. What's going on today, fellas?
It's going.
How much?
Getting through it.
So we do have some opening thoughts here. And Scott today decided to have one of the most ridiculous takes, maybe of all time. He writes an article saying that after, and this will be the second topic, after Leonard Fournette was cut today, Scott decides to write an article about how running backs are just worthless. Now, I'm for, running backs can be overvalued. I'm for that. Don't want to take running backs in the first round. I get it. But we have gone over the top crazy with the running backs don't matter thing. Christian McCaffrey. Carolina wins 2 games without him. I mean, they're trotting out Kyle Allen. They had the worst defense all year. He saved their year. Derrick Henry trots at fucking Tannehill to the AFC title game. Zeke Elliott, you go back and watch those 6 games, Dak Prescott without Zeke. We don't have these conversations about should Dak get paid. We're having the conversations of should Dak Prescott be a backup quarterback in this league. Dalvin Cook catches the most screen passes in the NFL. Completely saves Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins is dog shit. Limps the Vikings into the playoffs. Scott, running backs matter. They matter. We're not saying you got to fucking give them an arm and a leg, but they mean something.
That's more like what I was trying to go with. The point of that, you should not spend a first-round pick on a running back, and how most of the time you're going to get burned if you spend a first-round pick on a running back. Because we talk about the Bears drafting Trubisky over Mahomes. The Jags drafted Fournette because they had Blake Bortles instead of Mahomes or Watson. All right? Running backs aren't worth the big money. All right? You look at Le'Veon Bell. He's not worth the big money. Derrick Henry, the only reason he was great is because he had a monster second half of the year. All right?
What do you mean? He
weeks 1 through 9, he had 1 game over 100 rushing yards. Weeks 1 through 9. Tannehill took over week 7.
That doesn't matter, though.
Hold on. What Scott is really mad today because I had to checkmate him, and he said running backs have to be like supported by this great supporting cast, and
everything needs to be serviceable.
Nick Chubb rushed for 1,500 yards with bad quarterback play. Mayfield wasn't good last year. A terrible head coach. Odell was hurt all year and a bad offensive line. Nick Chubb was 1,500-yard rusher. They matter.
Scott, I'm not saying they don't completely matter. I'm saying they're not worth a first-round pick or big money.
So you were saying that running backs to be good need all the supporting cast around them, correct?
They need a serviceable supporting cast.
Okay. Would you say Leonard Fournette is good or bad at football?
He's not a good running back.
See, that's a tricky one to me, actually, because I think hold on. I think he's talented. I don't think he gives a fuck.
So, if running backs need the supporting cast, therefore, a bad running back wouldn't be able to get over a bad supporting cast, correct?
I'm saying that a running back is dictated mostly by the supporting cast around them.
Okay,
a running back cannot carry a team to the playoffs in this.
So if Leonard Fournette is so bad, it's good that we're talking about Leonard Fournette today because I have all these stats in front of me.
Oh, I'm ready.
If Leonard Fournette is so bad, why despite the fact that he had the 43rd of 47 running back rating in terms of yards before contact, on average, Leonard Fournette had 1.3 yards before he was contacted, which means his O-line would be pretty bad. Why did he still rush for almost 1,200 yards if he's a bad running back? And running backs need a good supporting cast.
I'm saying that. First off, that's a great point. Second, I didn't come prepared because I didn't know we were throwing this in the show.
I want to point out that Fournette was good his rookie year. He was good his rookie year.
Yes.
They don't get to the AFC title game without Fournette.
Man, you don't get to the AFC title game without the defense either.
He was good this year, too.
I just don't think he gives a fuck.
Yeah.
And maybe part of it's Jacksonville, but I don't think there's any question we should be getting more out of him. This, like, for people that watched Leonard Fournette at LSU,
That one
he
sophomore
fucking
year.
killed people. Like, he's like the Jadeveon Clowney version of running backs. Like,
So-
he's a physical freak.
Let me tell a story about Leonard Fournette, actually, that goes back to my high school days. And I won't name names, but I did play high school ball in grade 11 with a certain unbelievable Division I running back on my team. And I guess he went to some combine or something, and Leonard Fournette was there. And I was talking to my coach one time, and he said, like, this running back we have on our team is just as good as Leonard Fournette. And the only reason Leonard Fournette is getting all these looks at big-time SEC schools, and he's the number one running back in the class and whatever coming out of high school, is because he looks like a grown-ass man. It's not because he's actually better than anybody. It's just because he's got the look, which, I mean, I guess coming out of high school and high school recruits or whatever is different than, like, scouting for the NFL because you actually have meaningful film looking at college film.
But I believe he was the number one recruit at running back.
Yeah. So but that though, it's not because he was better than, my ESPN unranked friend who ended up going D1. It's just he looked the part, and if you look at pictures of him in his senior year of high school, looks pretty much the exact same as he does right now.
But I compare him to Jadeveon Clowney. Jadeveon Clowney could have played in the NFL as a freshman in college.
Yeah.
Fournette was ready. He just hasn't gotten better since.
No, he's just the same player he was, like, in his first year at LSU. And see, that to me would back up. I mean, we're getting into Leonard Fournette now. I was trying to roast
But
Scott.
I do want to go back to the
Thoroughly
Scott
roasted
conversation
Scott
too.
today. Yeah.
I think we're gonna end up back to that.
So, I mean, some would say, Scott, that is a hot take. Some would also say that could potentially be the hottest of takes. Are you trying to tell me that Saquon Barkley, Ezekiel Elliott, Dalvin Cook, other first-round running backs that are
Alvin Cook wasn't a first rounder.
Oh, he wasn't? Oh,
No.
He should have been. He's a stud.
He would have been if he wasn't an idiot.
Are you telling me Christian
He had, like,
McCaffrey,
dog troubles.
Saquon Barkley, and Ezekiel Elliott were not worth first-round picks?
My counter argument to that would be, what have the teams done since acquiring those players? What have they contributed to the greater mold of the team? Because you can produce numbers that's great for fantasy football, but that's not great for real football if your team isn't necessarily winning anything or going anywhere.
Well, okay, but when you're a running back and you're rushing for a ton of yards, that helps the team. If the other people don't use that opportunity, that's not really the running back's fault.
This is what I'll say to the Saquon Barkley case.
Quarterback is different. If it's quarterback, is different because they touch the ball every single play. They directly dictate what happens in a game. But with a running back like Saquon Barkley, if Saquon Barkley goes out and rushes for 1,200 yards and Daniel Jones doesn't take those opportunities or the OC doesn't take those opportunities to run play action and throw it over the top, like, I don't know what to tell you. And if I was Saquon Barkley, I wouldn't know what to tell you either.
I just want to point this out because Scott is basically arguing that the support system makes the running back. But I think you can easily argue the running back helps the support system. Dak
Shout out to
Prescott.
Sam Darnold and Le'Veon Bell.
Well, Le'Veon Bell wasn't good. I don't believe Le'Veon Bell was good in Pittsburgh. Mike Tomlin makes all his running backs good. But that's a different
I
conversation.
honestly just think you're a little bit butthurt because you're a Steelers fan and you thought Le'Veon Bell was the best thing since sliced bread.
I don't think Le'Veon Bell was anything special.
No, he held out, and then James Conner became the exact same player.
Yeah.
And then you felt stupid for saying Le'Veon Bell was the best running back ever.
Well,
First off, I never said that.
I want to go back to this, though, because the running back can make the support system.
Absolutely.
We remember Dak Prescott, 6-game stretch without Zeke Elliott. Does anybody remember his touchdown to interception ratio during that stretch?
It was awful.
Nope.
5 touchdowns, 7 picks, and he threw for under 220 yards in 5 of the 6 games. Fucking guy couldn't play. Not even, like, starter level couldn't play. Like, debate if he's even in the league. Bad.
Even so, like, I'll even use some experience from, like, the U Sports level too. As a defensive player, do you know how easy it is to play football when you know they're not going to run the ball because they can't run the ball on you?
That's my point. Like, we saw what Ryan Tannehill looks like in Miami. He never had a star running back in Miami.
That's Adam Gase. That's the Gase of hell.
Well, listen, I saw what he looks like in Miami. He goes to Tennessee, and it's not like he's got some magical play caller in Tennessee. Mike Vrabel's a defensive coach. He goes to Tennessee, teams stack the box against Derrick Henry, and Tannehill's like unbelievable. He leads the league in completion percentage. Ryan Tannehill.
Yeah. I think that like in football, every position is kind of interdependent on, every other position. Like a quarterback depends on the O-line, the running back, and the receivers. The running back relies on the O-line. The receivers rely on the O-line to block for the quarterback, and then the quarterback to throw them the ball properly. The O-line relies on the running back hitting the right hole. Like everybody relies on everybody. So I don't really think – I kind of hate when people say, like in the NFL especially, that so-and-so is a system player. I don't really think there's such a thing.
That's because you're a Brady fan.
Well, I'm not going to lie, yeah, because that's just such an absurd assumption in football. It's like everybody is kind of a system player because, like, nobody's going to be good if everybody else on your team sucks. That's just not going to – like that. If you truly make the argument that they're system players and that players are only good in a certain system, that's a stupid argument for football, in my opinion.
I'll go back to this because I'm not saying every running back deserves to be in the first round. So, some people are overdrafted. But I go back to my draft notes all the time. Chris Johnson is the highest graded running back I've ever given since scouting players. And he didn't even go that high, but I would have absolutely taken him like top 5, top 10. That Tennessee Titans team was not good. Like, they won 13 games with Vince Young and Kerry Collins. Like, that Tennessee Titans team was god-awful. Chris Johnson single-handedly carried them. Like, Jeff Fisher was the head coach. They won 13 games. Chris Johnson, that was it. He was the only guy.
CJ2K, baby.
So I'll walk back my point a bit. You do not spend a first-round pick on a running back because you can find a guy like a Dalvin Cook in the later rounds. You can find a serviceable running back in the later rounds. You also don't pay big money to a running back because you can find a replacement in the draft. I'm just saying you shouldn't break the banks. You shouldn't trade the house for a running back because if you're the Giants, entire team's a mess, entire defense is a mess. This year, you have the chance to pick from a fairly good edge class or a defender class. And you have to – or not this year, last year, the year before when they drafted Daniel Jones. You can't do that because you passed up on one of Sam Darnold, Lamar Jackson, Josh Rosen, Josh Allen.
Well, Rosen didn't quite work.
One of those four. Everyone outside of Baker Mayfield.
I said that the Giants should have taken Darnold, though. I think Darnold's special.
Exactly. So would you rather be in that situation where you have your franchise quarterback a year early and then you can address the defense in the following year? Because 2019, that draft, that was a good defensive edge. That was a good edge draft. And so I feel the Giants could have done better if they were able to select an edge defender because if they had their quarterback figured out. They didn't. They had to take Daniel Jones with the 6th overall pick.
I think the argument you're making is kind of like you shouldn't overplay. Like your argument is essentially you shouldn't overpay players who don't deserve to be paid. Like I personally, if I was what's his face, the new coach for the Carolina Panthers from Baylor,
Matt Rule.
Yeah, if I was Matt Rule, like McCaffrey is a blank check guy to me.
I agree.
Like Derrick Henry isn't quite a blank check guy, but I'd still pay him a lot of money. Ezekiel Elliott, like he would be a blank check guy in Dallas if they weren't trying to pay literally everybody else on their roster.
They paid him already a good chunk of money.
Yeah. So who else? Dalvin Cook, blank check guy.
Derrick Henry got his money.
Yeah.
Gurley's the one that didn't work out, but we all knew he had bad knees. Everybody knew he had bad knees.
Is the definition of a blank check guy. He's the best player on the Giants. He honestly, he's probably been the best player on the Giants since he got there because Odell sucked since Saquon Barkley got there. And then he left the team, obviously. So I just think that, like, yeah, I mean, I suppose you're right. You shouldn't really pay players that much money. You don't deserve to be paid that much money. But, I mean, you shouldn't not pay them just because they're a running back. Because, I mean, there's running backs in the league that there's pretty much no limit to what I would pay them if I was a GM.
At bare minimum, I just want Scott to apologize to Nick Chubb. That's all I want.
I never said Nick Chubb was worthless, but
just apologize to Nick Chubb. That's all I want.
Hold on, before I do that.
Admit that Derrick Henry's 800-yard run in the last half of the season was impressive. Admit it.
Yeah, that's all I want.
Yeah, and that's the only reason he was over 1,000. The only reason he was over 1,000 2018 was because he had a 300-yard game against the fucking Jags.
Just admit that Nick Chubb is not worthless. That's all I want.
Nick Chubb is not worthless.
Okay.
In the NFL, you can't say, "Oh, he had a 300-yard rushing game against a bad team."
I'm saying you take that one game, which is an outlier compared to the rest of the season. You take out your best game, your worst game. That's who you are.
Yeah, but it's not like the FCS or FBS where Alabama could roll into the Citadel and play a terrible team. Like, this is the NFL. There's a floor for how bad teams are. So, and against
that floor is 0-16. So how do you feel?
Pardon?
That floor is 0-16. How do you feel about that floor?
It doesn't matter. It's 300 yards in the NFL. It's impressive. It's really impressive. Blasphemy.
By the way, the person you're arguing with on Instagram is so fired up that he wants back in on the site now. Are we ready? Are we ready to start the show?
Yeah, what the fuck, man?
Don't ever say that again, Scott.
Yeah, Leonard Fournette was cut. We kind of talked about it. Do we have any more?
Worth the first round pick.
Yeah, so I have something to say about the Jags in general.
Okay.
The Jags have probably been maybe the second worst run team in the past 10 years, maybe behind the Browns.
How the fuck does David Caldwell still have a job?
I don't know.
It's unbelievable.
So they've spent a ton of draft capital on really, really great young players in the past 5 years, and they have none of those good players left. Blake Bortles was pretty bad, but he had one good season and then, had a couple seasons where, nobody on the team really did him any favors and they cut him. Yannick Ngakoue is one of the best young pass rushers in the league. Let him go. Calais Campbell is one of the best D-linemen in the league still. They let him go. Jalen Ramsey is potentially the best corner in the NFL and they let him go. And now Leonard Fournette, who was pretty much the only bright spot other than Gardner Minshew on their offense last year. This guy had 1,152 rushing yards, which equaled out to 4.5 yards a carry and 500 receiving yards. You're telling me Jacksonville on their offense can afford to part with 1,700 all-purpose yards? I just don't think so. I don't know why they cut him. I don't understand it.
They just want Trevor Lawrence, I guess.
Honestly, that's the only thing I can really logically see them doing, which is stupid because I think Gardner Minshew is really good.
I actually think Gardner Minshew is going to win enough games to that they don't get the first pick. Yeah,
imagine if they sat Gardner Minshew down there yeah, we're going to tank. Gardner Minshew's yo, fuck that. My job.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think I'm kicking myself for not doing this, but my team was so good that I literally didn't have the roster spot. I really wish I would have picked Raekwon Armstead in my league. I think he's going to go nuts now. I really liked him coming out of Temple. He was my literal favorite back in that draft class. I wasn't high on Josh Jacobs, even though he's proven me wrong. I'm a big Raekwon Armstead fan. I think he's really good.
Yeah, I mean, regardless.
Even though I picked him as a who the fuck is that guy, but Scott, he
didn't.
He had to do the editing cheese.
You didn't. No, you didn't.
Raekwon, I also liked Raekwon Armstead coming out of Temple. I thought he was not given enough respect for how good he was at college, and I was honestly kind of sad that he got drafted to Jacksonville because he was behind Leonard Fournette. But I just think that like I said, Jacksonville can't afford to part with 1,700 yards of total offense. And even if he's a fourth overall pick, I don't understand what you want out of him. Like, if you're Jacksonville, I don't understand what more you can ask of that guy. Like, there's last season, there's other than he only had 3 rushing touchdowns, and that's the only bad thing.
3 total touchdowns.
What are the fantasy implications here? Do we have any fantasy takeaways?
I think that his most likely landing spot is probably Washington.
Oh,
And
that would be something.
I know your boy Bryce Love is poised to get a ton of carries this year. But that's, a place that makes sense for him. And that's kind of a place where I could see them being like, sort of have open doors, being like, hey, if you weren't good enough for Jacksonville, sure as hell good enough for us. Like, and honestly, they kind of need semi-proven running backs that, because who knows with Adrian Peterson and, like, who knows with Bryce Love, honestly, and, like, Antonio Gibson is, a rookie, so who knows what he's going to do. Like, I just think it makes sense for them to sign him, especially because they would get him an absolute premium right now.
So I kind of hope he goes to the Jets just because I would love nothing more than for him to go to the Jets and him to outplay Le'Veon Bell. That would just make me so happy.
Well, he's better than Le'Veon Bell, I think.
I agree. I agree.
If I had the choice between the two, I'm not picking Le'Veon Bell. 10 out of 10 times I'm picking Leonard.
Who would you say was the more productive receiver between the two last year?
Well, Bell's better as a pass catcher.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I mean, Leonard Fournette had 500 receiving yards, so yeah. I don't know.
But we're also talking about Le'Veon Bell, who averaged 3.2 yards a carry, and there was only one running back who was statistically worse, and that was Peyton Barber. So, Anyway, unless you guys have anything else on Fournette. No, I like Rick Armstead. That's it.
Typical Jacksonville mismanagement, letting all their good players.
I wouldn't say it's mismanagement because they didn't want to cut him. They tried to trade him. They had no buyers. No one wanted him. No one wanted him for anything. No one wanted him for even a 6.
In the first place, like, why would you want to get rid of him?
The real question is, are you going to blame them for not wanting him, or are you going to blame other people for not wanting to get him? Teams, they would want to give up a 5th, 6th, 7th round pick.
Why would you give up a draft pick when you can sign him right now?
This was before they cut him. This is earlier, months ago in the offseason.
No, but teams know how that stuff goes. Like, if they don't get any calls, they just cut him, and then you can, sign him without having a pick.
But then if you're concerned
plus his
about
contract is actually
market,
he's got some money to his contract because he was a high pick too. Probably don't want to pay that maybe.
Probably not worth that high pick.
Who knows? I just think Jacksonville and the Jets, it's the same thing. They can never hold on to their players. It's terrible. And it's so sad too, because these players, when they get picked, come in like probably thinking like, oh, I'm going to turn this franchise around. I'm going to, make a different New York Jets or make a different Jacksonville Jaguars. And then they just get rid of them like 3 years later.
All right. Last piece of news here. Alvin Kamara not showing up to camp. He has missed the last 3 days of practice. He is a no-show right now. Apparently in the CBA, if he misses 5 days of practice, he loses a free agent year. So he would be an absolute lunatic to hold out. But is there any concern Kamara actually does hold out? Cayne?
This might be blasphemy for you guys, but I just don't think Alvin Kamara is that good.
I'm with you.
So
I think he's overrated too.
He hasn't had a 1,000-yard rushing season, and he the production hasn't been there. What did he have, like 1,100 all-purpose yards or something last year?
He catches the ball.
He catches the ball, and that's all fine and good. But when you have Mike Thomas that's taking up 150 receptions out of your potential 400,
that's too low, like 700 receptions.
Yeah. So I just don't think he's that good, and I think that it's kind of like the Dak Prescott thing, where it's like, why are you holding out to get more money? Just take what they're going to give you. You're not really that good anyway.
I don't get I see fantasy rankings all the time. It's like Alvin Kamara, top 4 back. It's like,
why? Tell me why. I don't understand.
I'm with you.
But he's just.
He's good. He's not top 4 or whatever. They're like rankings all over the place.
What I will say about this is clearly nobody's learned anything about what happened with Le'Veon Bell. He held out. People realized that there's another running back that you could pay way less money, and he
You
did
know
the
what?
same thing.
You know what bothers me is when people are like, Le'Veon Bell, good decision to hold out. He lost a shit ton of money by doing that. Like, that franchise tag is worth a ton. He's never going to get that money back.
Well, and not to mention that he would have been on the Steelers and not the New York Jets.
And he would have made more money in free agency if he had a good year.
Yeah. See, I don't know. See, that's why I don't understand holding out, because football is all about, in the NFL, and college football and youth sports and high school, it's all about what have you done for me now? What have you done for me lately? So I don't really understand why it's like I've been watching a lot of Shark Tank lately, and every time people go out of the Shark Tank, it's always a bad thing. Because what happens is they're like, hey, guys, can we just leave the Shark Tank and talk about these deals for a second? And they walk out, and Kevin O'Leary's like, hey, guys, you want to fuck these guys over or what? and then they always come back, and Kevin O'Leary's like, yeah, I want 95% of your business, and I'll give you half the money you asked for. So it's kind of the same thing. Like, why would you want people to sit and marinate on the deal? Because eventually they're going to be like, oh, we don't really want to give this guy that much money.
I like the Shark Tank reference. Scott, quick, are you worried he's holding out?
No, because especially if I'm the Saints. In fact, I kind of want him to hold out.
Yeah, he'd be a lunatic.
Because then he becomes a restricted free agent. And so the Saints could either match the deal or they'll get better compensation for him.
They can place a first-round tender on him.
Yeah, like no team's going to give up a first-round pick for Alvin Kamara
and sign him to a contract.
Pay him a massive contract.
I don't even think I'd give a third-round pick for Alvin Kamara, to be honest with you.
I'm with you.
Like fourth is like the absolute most, and that would be like scraping
it for you.
Phone. So I don't know. Maybe it's just my opinion on Alvin Kamara, like just not being that good. He just doesn't really impress me. So,
all right.
Yeah.
So the main focus of the show, and of course, we're brought to you by VendettaSportsMedia.com. I got the shirt on. We're making some moves here. Football season's coming up. No time to fuck around. I'm going to show these fuckers what's going on this month. Cayne Lander, Scott Logush, myself, Trey Daubert. Make sure to follow all of them. Hit the subscribe button on YouTube. Got another one, up to 93 now. So main focus of the show today, we're going to be talking about players that screwed you over in fantasy, and you have to decide whether to forgive them or not to forgive them. Cayne, let's go to you first. Who's your first pick here?
Le'Veon Bell. In the 2015 season, he only played 6 games. Second overall pick, and I picked Le'Veon Bell. And he screwed me, and I'm never forgiving him ever. So that's my whole thing. Like, I only picked him because I was a very young fantasy player, and I saw that he was like ranked the best player or whatever. The guy in front of me didn't take him. So I just took him thinking, my rationale was he's going to catch 30 passes and he's going to rush for at least 1,000 yards. Like, you can't really go wrong with this guy. You can, in fact, go very wrong with that guy, as I learned. So, yeah, I obviously would never pick Le'Veon Bell again because I think his career is, on the downswing for sure.
Bell is the guy. Oh, go ahead.
But, yeah, 2015 was a year that I wasted my second-round pick on Le'Veon Bell.
Bell is a guy I've played the stock market with really well in terms of fantasy. I had him in 2016 and 2017. Very good those years. Let him walk the next year. Picked up James Conner. That worked out really well. But I want to talk about Le'Veon Bell because this isn't being mentioned enough. People are absolute lunatics if they think he's going to have a good year this year. Lunatics. Last year, he averages 3.2 yards a carry, 245 attempts, doesn't rush for 800 yards, 245 attempts, 3 touchdowns. Here's what's going to happen this year. Frank Gore's going to get carries. Frank Gore's going to get carries. Bilal Powell did basically nothing. He was a backup running back all year and got 40 carries all year. Bell got every touch. That's not happening this year. So if Bell was bad with every touch, what makes people think he's going to be good now that Adam Gase hates him and Frank Gore's there to steal his carries?
They also didn't really do anything to, I don't understand definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over again and to expect a different result, right? They didn't do anything to their offensive line this year.
They did things. I just don't know if it's any better.
Well, that's what I mean. Like they didn't do if there was one position on offense that they needed to address, it was the offensive line. And instead of improving their offensive line, they signed Rashad Perryman, the first-round bust, and who might have a total of like 5 catches in his like 4-year career.
He was actually good for Tampa like the last 2 weeks for somehow. It was fun.
Yeah, 2 weeks. So maybe I don't know. Maybe he's coming into his own. But instead of improving their offensive line, all they did was lose their 2 best players in Jamal Adams and Robbie Anderson. And now this year they're going to be like, oh, Sam Darnold needs to do great, or we're going to like move on for him or whatever. It's like,
oh my God, that would be a disaster.
But it's the same thing we just talked about with Jacksonville. Like the Jets can't hold on to good players. They can't. They always get rid of all their young talent. And Jamal Adams is like the best strong safety in the NFL and maybe the second best strong safety in the NFL. And like, how do you let that guy go?
I actually defend him. I defended him for that trade. I thought 2 first-round picks was too much for him.
Really?
Yeah.
I think
that's a lot. That's more than Khalil Mack got.
Yeah, that is a big trade, but at the same time, it's like for that trade to make sense for me, you'd have to have one of these guys live up to Jamal Adams, or both of them combined to live up to like how good Jamal Adams was, if that makes sense. And I don't know. I would take Jamal Adams probably like 9 times out of 10 if it can, because like the Jets have never been great at drafting anyway. So I don't know. It's just
2 first-round picks is a lot.
Yeah.
Scott, anything on Bell quick, or do you want to give your pick?
I think we've said everything and then some on Le'Veon Bell. So let's just skip that. All right, so for my pick is going to be James Conner, 2019. Took him later rounds, but he was just injured. Didn't produce much at all. We talk about giving Le'Veon Bell shit for 3 touchdowns. James Conner had 4, albeit on 116 carries. But James Conner took him to be high-tier RB2. Didn't really pan out for me this year. I did pick up Benny Snell in free agency, though, so that helped.
This is another one. I've played the stock market increasingly well. I traded Connor before last year. So kind of saw it coming. I used his contract to get rid of Andrew Luck after he retired. Thank God. Didn't have to pay him this year.
Yeah.
So you're in on James Conner this year or out on James Conner this year?
Out on James Conner this year. Talk about Anthony McFarland going to be stealing some touches. Benny Snell is going to be stealing some touches. It's just not going to be great.
I'm probably with you.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like that's not like, not to be like, oh, your pick sucks or anything, because it doesn't.
No, but your pick sucks.
But like the reason I said my pick is because I took him with the 2nd overall pick. Like I just feel like
I don't play that much fantasy football.
No, I'm not saying like it was a good pick, honestly. If you got James Conner in late rounds, like that's a great pick. It just he didn't pan out. Like a lot of guys get hurt, and all I'm saying is like good for you, because at least you didn't spend like a 1st-round pick on him. And you were sitting there like with your dick in your hand, not knowing what to do after you got hurt.
Well, we do auction drafts here, Cayne, so.
I don't know.
All right. Again, another reminder, we're brought to you by VendettaSportsMedia.com. Make sure to follow Cayne Lander, exactly how it sounds, on Twitter. Logush52 for Scott, myself, Trey Daubert. Subscribe on YouTube. So you guys have been negative Nancy's. You're talking about guys who screwed you over and you'll never draft them again. I'm going 2 positive routes. I'm going to talk about 2 guys who screwed me over, but I would absolutely draft them again. I take blame for it. If they screwed me over, it's kind of my fault. But I'm willing to take the shot again. Pick number 1 here is Will Fuller, and he's hurt every year. I get it. He's hurt constantly. He's never on the field. He's always down. But this is an offense that 150 targets have vanished. DeAndre Hopkins is gone. He does not exist on the Houston Texans anymore. Somebody has to get 150 targets this year. Somebody has to get them. Somebody's going to score fantasy points on the Houston Texans. I don't know who it will be, but if I had to pick one, it would be Will Fuller. And the reason is because I've seen Will Fuller, again, when he's healthy, be very dominant and be a very worthwhile first-round pick. So this goes back to targets again because Hopkins no longer there. Fuller has 16 career games of 7 or more targets, and those targets should be there. On those games, he has 87 receptions for 1,192 yards and 8 touchdowns. If I get that this year, and Will Fuller, maybe he doesn't play every game. Maybe he plays 13 games. If I get that this year, he's going to be a top 10 fantasy wide receiver. And he has every ability. He's got speed. He can catch the deep ball. Oh, by the way, his quarterback's Deshaun Watson. So kind of like those odds too. So Will Fuller, he screwed me in the past. He's gotten hurt, but I would take him again.
The other thing about Will Fuller too is there's no chance he's like in any of like the top 10 rounds either. Like there's no chance. Like not a lot of people would think that. I'm probably one of those people that wouldn't take a guy that's been hurt like every season of his NFL career. But
the acquisition cost is nothing.
Huge value pick. That'd be a huge value pick because I guarantee you he's not going to go like top 10 rounds.
It's a risk versus reward thing. You're not paying anything for him. So maybe he sucks, but the ceiling on this is through the roof.
Worst case scenario, you lose 11th, like an 11th round pick on this.
Somebody has to catch passes from Deshaun Watson.
Yeah.
Scott?
You guys basically just took everything there.
Okay. Scott, you want to start this one then? Your second pick?
Let's go back to Cayne. He started us off. I'll defer to Cayne on this one.
My second pick is David Johnson. Same reason as Le'Veon Bell.
I'm with you again.
2017 season, took him first overall.
Nice.
They said he was going to literally play in the NFL like Jesus.
Oh.
And in possibly the softest season-ending injury I've ever seen, he hurt his wrist and was out for, 14 games? 15 games maybe even?
Something like that.
I think it was literally like the first or second game he got hurt. And so, no, I will never draft David Johnson again, ever in my life. I was so hurt by that. And then the year after that, actually, I took a break from fantasy because I was I was not trying to get
hurt.
I was not trying to get hurt again. And honestly, I know like wrist injuries can be serious sometimes, but like I saw that and I was like, a wrist injury? Are you for real right now? Like you're missing 15 games for a wrist? Play running back. Like, I don't know. I just don't. I understand it, but it just sucked, and I'm never picking David Johnson ever again. And he's probably never going to be good ever again, as we've said on this show before.
I've been anti-David Johnson from the start. I never drafted him. Even when he was good in Arizona, I never wanted him.
Yeah, well, young fantasy drafting Cayne thought that it was a great idea to go with what the fantasy projections said and draft David Johnson first overall.
Scott?
I don't know if I'd never have David Johnson on my team. I'd sign him like after the draft. Or if I have nothing else to spend a pick on, I'll blow a pick on him.
That'll never happen, though.
No. All right, because someone's going to be dumb enough to take him early. Yeah. But if the acquisition cost is low enough, I'll take a flyer.
He's the opposite of Will Fuller, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Like he has, like, pretty much no matter what he does this season in his power, I guarantee you it'll be below expectations. And there's zero shot he doesn't go in, like, the first 5 rounds.
Yep.
So, I mean, I don't know. I just don't think the risk reward is there. And to be honest with you, I just don't see it. So.
Scott, what do you got? Second pick.
So, this one is a bit of you can debate how heartbreaking it is. But mine is probably Mine is probably going to be Mitch Trubisky from last year. Before Trey just goes a whole "what the fuck are you thinking" thing.
Why would you ever pick Mitch Trubisky?
I can guarantee if you worked for the site before the draft, you would have.
Which
known
I didn't.
this. Yeah.
Which I didn't, but that's a completely different issue. This was in large part based off of production and hoping that he could build off of his production from last year or not last year, the year before, you know what I mean? Because in terms of just numbers, not talking play, we're talking just numbers because that's all that matters for fantasy. He was a decent fantasy quarterback the year before. Fantasy quarterback, not actual quarterback.
Well, he was actually a decent quarterback the year before too, though.
Trey's got something to say about that.
He wasn't great, but he wasn't like terrible.
It was smoke and mirrors, but
yeah,
you know.
So I was just hoping that he could run a little bit, give me some yards and touchdowns that way. No, so I was basically fucked from the quarterback perspective.
I've never seen any quarterback run 4.6 at the combine and then be so disappointing as an athlete. The guy looks like Tom Brady when he runs.
Marcus Mariota.
Yeah, Tom Brady can pick up quarterback sneaks.
No, I don't know. I feel like, to be honest with you, I feel like that's probably a good pick. Like you said, he could be your like QB2 guy and just like take a flyer on him. I bet what round you get him in? 10?
Yeah, later round.
Yeah, so I don't know.
It was more so I like waited on quarterback for quite a bit. So he was the first quarterback I took because I just waited and waited so I could try to get a value pick. Didn't work.
Yeah.
So my last pick here, again, this is a guy that screwed me, but I feel like I only have myself to blame because I guess the backstory here is I signed this player in 2018 to a 2-year contract. Probably should have signed him to a 1-year contract. $31 down the drain for A.J. Green last year.
Oh.
But I forgive him. I'm back in on A.J. Green. The reason is because people have short memories. A.J. Green's fucking good. A.J. Green was drafted ahead of Julio Jones. And it wasn't like he didn't deserve to be drafted ahead of Julio Jones. He was awesome at Georgia. He's a superstar at Georgia. And he's been nothing but a superstar in the NFL, despite having Andy Dalton and terrible quarterback play forever. He's never played more than 10 games in a year and failed to record 1,000 yards. You can check mark him 1,000 yards every year with bad quarterback play. And I'm not a huge Joe Burrow guy. I don't think Joe Burrow's night and day, like superstar first overall pick, can't miss. But anything's better than what he got for fucking 10 years with Dalton. So if AJ Green's healthy, and again, I don't know if he's healthy, but it seems like he took the whole year off and the camp reports are positive. We've seen when AJ Green is on the field, he is nothing but productive. If he's on the field this year and he has better quarterback play, I don't see why he can't exceed expectations by a shit ton.
Yeah, I'm a big AJ Green guy. In that article I wrote about Joe Burrow and whether or not he could succeed in Cincinnati, I talked about how the receiving core there is actually one of the bright spots and probably a place where Joe Burrow is going to get a lot of relief from. Whether or not AJ Green is healthy, because at the time of that article, I read a report that said 3 days into camp, AJ Green hadn't actually practiced in pads yet because he tweaked his hamstring or something.
Right.
He's not getting any younger, but I mean, this year, for as far as Bengals quarterbacks go or Bengals receivers go, I would not hate to take Tyler Boyd in a later round, actually, because it's kind of the same thing as you said with D-Hop and Will Fuller. Like, someone has to catch those passes, and Tyler Boyd has been great in relief of Green. But I definitely agree with you. Like, I think that when Green's healthy, there's not many receivers that are better than him in the NFL. The first time I saw AJ Green play, he was absolutely electric, and just nobody could cover him. It was absurd. He caught like 17 balls for like 180 yards and like 3 touchdowns. So he's absolutely electric when he can play. It's just you know how I feel about injuries. I'm not. It's kind of like show me before I take a flyer on you. But
And I'm the opposite. I will take injury risk all the time, except if your name is Jordan Reed. Then I won't draft you.
fair.
Scott, you got anything on AJ Green?
People are definitely forgetting how good of a receiver he really is.
That takes a lot for you to say as a Pittsburgh Steeler fan.
Oh, it does. It really does. Well, he's a great receiver, and yes, he missed a year, but all the more reason people are just sleeping on him. He's going to be a good receiver.
I would take AJ Green with one leg over Juju Smith-Schuster right now.
All right. No, you wouldn't.
No.
No, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't.
Have you ever seen that Madden clip of that guy running down the field with a broken leg the whole
That's
time?
Greg Jennings.
Greg Jennings.
That's Greg Jennings. Greg Jennings.
Well, if Greg Jennings can do it, AJ Green can do it.
So that's Madden, all right? I shit talks Madden enough.
Who the fuck is that guy?
It's time. Who the fuck is that guy? Guy you never heard of. A guy you will never draft. Somehow, some way, he will win you your fantasy league. Cayne, what do you got here?
Well, this might not be a huge who the fuck is that guy, but Michael Pittman Jr. on the Broncos.
Colts.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. What am I thinking? T.Y. Hilton isn't getting any younger. Phillip Rivers likes to spread the ball around, and I think Michael Pittman Jr. From the videos I've seen in camp, like he looks crisp. Like if you had covered that guy's face and put him in a generically colored combine uniform and told me that was, Jerry Jeudy running routes, I probably would have believed you. Like very crisp, in and out of his cuts. And I think that, honestly the Colts offense is going to absolutely flutter this year. I think it's going to be great. Like Phillip Rivers obviously doesn't have a whole lot left in the tank, but they have the best O-line in the NFL. I think Jonathan Taylor and Marlon Mack are probably going to be the best running back tandem in the NFL. And I think that, T.Y. Hilton and Michael Pittman Jr. will be right there with them.
I think his best quality is actually his hands.
Right.
His catch radius is really good.
Mm-hmm.
Scott, who's your pick for this week?
Logan Thomas.
That's who Alex just picked on the last episode. Who Scott clearly doesn't watch the show.
Oh, I think we've had a repeat before. I think one repeat may have been you. I will have to fact check that.
Me?
Yeah.
That is not true.
I have to fact check that, but
Yeah,
you want to go into
just like you're editing Cheese last time, not crediting me for Raquel Armstead.
because you didn't pick him.
It doesn't sound right.
Is Logan Thomas the guy who played quarterback at Virginia Tech?
Yes.
He is.
Okay.
Yes, he is a guy. You want me to find someone else?
No, go ahead.
Basically, with the release of Thaddeus Moss, Logan Thomas, not Jeremy Sprinkle, Logan Thomas is a starting tight end for the Washington football team. If you're a starting tight end, you're going to see some value. You're going to see some targets, some receptions. So he's going to be somewhere. He also has the measurables. He has the size. He has the speed. And last year, I'm not saying he was good by any means because he was on the Lions, but he averaged 10.8 yards per reception. If he can see, and he averages 9.1 yards per reception for his career.
Because if he averages 10.8 yard receptions and he has 10 catches, I'm not impressed.
Oh, he has 16. 16, one touchdown. Not a lot of targets. He's going to be a starting tight end. He's going to have some value there. I can't keep pumping out short white slot receivers like Scotty Miller. I called 3 months in advance.
All right, I'm going to go with Texans tight end Jordan Akins. And Darren Fells has kind of been the lead guy there, but he's kind of a journeyman. Never really made his stamp in the league. It feels like now's the time Jordan Akins can take over. He got his start in football late, played some baseball, but at UCF he was pretty good, had a good senior bowl. First year in the league, 225 yards. Second year in the league, 418 yards. Just feels like it's time. Third year, it's make or break time. Jordan Akins, go out there, be a starting tight end for the Houston Texans and dominate.
And like you said too, like I don't think Will Fuller is going to catch 100 or is going to deserve 150 targets. Like I think he's good, but 150 targets is a lot, and that's going to be spread out all over the receiving corps too. So I actually like that pick a lot, actually.
Yeah. There we go.
There's targets to go around in Houston.
There's a lot of them. Any closing thoughts here? All right. Go to the store, buy a shirt. I got mine on. We're having new designs up. Cayne will get his once he hits 50 articles. I think Scott's is on the way, but that's going to do it.
It's on the way.
Yeah. Hit the subscribe button on YouTube. Check us out, vendettasportsmedia.com. Thank you guys for watching, and we will see you next time.